Well, you've made it to the final lesson here in Module 2. Let's get into how to integrate Stripe because it's going to be something you're going to be doing on every single application you build. There's going to be some type of payment gateway that your client wants or you want yourself. So let's get into how to integrate Stripe into Bubble. You can see here I have some of the prettiest looking pricing cards known to man on our pricing page. So if you just want to pause and copy that really quick, feel free to do so because I'm just going to build off top of this UI. So what's the first thing that we need to think about doing when setting up our Stripe? Well, it's probably going to be setting up our database because that's the first thing we want to start with, as always, because that's what we build upon in our workflows. So let's go to data and see what we have right now. Well, we don't have anything. We just have a user, the name, and role. So we need to set up a way to start collecting or storing Stripe information. So how do we do that? Let's create a new type called payments. We'll create, and then we need to add some fields. So the first thing we'll add is a last payment date, and we'll select the type of date and create. Then the next thing we'll have is payment frequency. So how often are they paying? Monthly or annually, something like that. And that'll be a text. And then we'll have a product ID. Which product did they purchase? This will be a text as well. Then we'll have a Stripe customer ID. And we'll have a text, create. We'll have a subscription end date as a text, and we'll create that. Then the last field we're going to have is a status, which is probably the most important field because this is going to let us know, is the user an active subscriber or not? We need to track that with everything we got because we don't want somebody not paying and using our application. So let's select field type as text, and we should be good to go. Please note, I didn't just pull these out of thin air. I used Stripe documentation to figure out which ones I want to store, and you can do that as well. Remember, I'm not just creating these out of nothing. There's documentation involved with this of what's being returned to us. So feel free to check out Stripe's documentation on your own and see what information they have available. Next thing we're going to do is go over to our design. Let's start in our sign-up page. So we're in our sign-up page, and what do we need to do? Well, right now, let's see what happens. The button sign up is clicked, we sign the user up, and they go right to the pricing page. So that's actually correct. That's what we want to happen. It's going to be a new user, so there's nothing wrong with that. Let's go to our login. So let's look at these steps. We have log the user in, go to index, and then go to admin if they're admin. But we don't want that to happen. We want to check to see if they have a subscription. Then if they don't, we go to the pricing page. So let's do that. Let's add another navigation, and we'll go to a page, and we'll go to pricing page. And we want to only do this if the user doesn't have an active subscription. So we'll select current user, and we'll select payments. And notice we don't see this. I'm learning this with you, but we don't see it. So why is that? Let's go back to our database. Let's see what we did wrong. So we added our payments, we added all the correct fields, but in our user, we never associated payments with any user. And this is such a crucial point, so I'm glad we discovered this early. You have to go in user and associate that payments table that we just created with the user, otherwise there's no correlation. How do we know which user is on which Stripe plan and what their Stripe plan information is? Well, we need to create a new field. We need to call this payments, and we need to select the payments type. Create, and now we have an association of user to the payment. Such a crucial mistake that so many people make, even myself included. To this day, we just did it together. So remember when doing another table or creating another table, you have to associate it to the user again. So let's go back to our workflow. We have our log the user in. We have the go to pricing page, and we want to do it only when the current user, their payments, so we have that option now. So payments, we'll select the status, we'll select is. Actually, we'll do is not active. So if it's not active, we're going to go somewhere to the pricing page in this case. If it is active, they'll continue along with steps 1, 2, and 3. But we need to move this in front of step 1 because we need it to perform this action first before even allowing a user to log in. And here, we only want to log the user in if the current user, their payment status, is active. Great, so now we've gated the login process. If they don't have an active subscription, go to the pricing page. And if they do have an active subscription, then we navigate to the index page. Great. So we have that set up. Let's see how we're going to interact with Stripe though, because we still haven't done that. Let's come to plugin. And in our plugin page, you can see that I installed a new plugin, which is called Stripe. So with Stripe, it's asking us again for our API keys, as every plugin's going to pretty much that interacts with another application. In this case, we're just going to stick with development and not worry about live for now. So let's go find those. Let's go over to Stripe, and I'm just in the Stripe homepage. I'm in test mode. This is a brand new account. So this is exactly what it should look like for you as well. Now to get our API keys, we just have to come to the developer tab. So click developers, come to API keys. Then you can see we have our publishable and secret key. So let's copy and paste that. Let's copy the publishable key and we'll select development. So we'll paste it right there. Then we'll come and select our secret key. I'm going to delete this again, so don't get any funny ideas. Let's come back and paste that into secret ID or secret key. Then we need to get our client ID. So how do we get this? Well, it's kind of confusing to get to in Stripe. I don't know why they make it so difficult to find. Every time I go to it, I literally just go to Google and I type in Stripe, client ID. I come down here to the second link and I scroll down a bit and I find the link that goes directly to your client ID. And if you want to do this in Stripe, you just go to their documentation, go to payments, and then you're in testing, and you should see your client ID right here, and we just copy and paste that over. So let's go to our Bubble application, paste it in development. Great. Now, what do we need to do next? Well, we need to add products to our Stripe account. So let's do that. Let's go to product catalog, add a new product. We'll call this our starter plan. And we'll go down to details. We see pricing model. We're going to leave that be. It's going to be $10. We'll leave recurring since we are charging monthly. And then we'll save the product and do the same thing for our pro plan. So pretty easy to make these products in Stripe, which I love. We can do it really quickly. So pro plan, $25, reoccurring monthly, and we will save the product. Great, so we have both our products. Now let's go back to Bubble and see how we can't interact with these products. So we're in Bubble. Let's go to our design and go to our pricing page. So a user is going to be directed here. So we need to select this sign up button, and when a user signs up, we need to put them on a plan. So we'll add a workflow. Come down here and add the first step. Now, we installed that plugin, so you would think you'd come to plugin, and then you just select the plugin here, but that's not the case. This is a plugin with pre-built functionality in it, so the action should be available to us if we just search for actions. However, we made these plugins ourselves, meaning we put the code in ourselves into the API connector. That's why they're displaying, and that's why Stripe is not. So we just select subscribe or type it in. So subscribe the user to a plan is what we want to do. Then we have these options that we need to fill out. Well, we want to apply the action to the current user, of course. Update existing subscription. Well, we don't want to do that in this case because we're assuming they're all new. We'll uncheck that for now. We'll select the Stripe plan. So you're going to see these two plans that come up. These are the products we just made. When we input those API keys, it automatically drags those in and lets us select them. But how do we know which one to select? Because they're just a bunch of numbers and I don't know what any of this means. Well, let's come back to Stripe and select a plan. So our starter plan. You can see they have an API. They have an API ID. Let's leave that in there. They have an API ID. So we need to take this price ID and correlate it back to Bubble. So you can see it's 10 and then TZ at the end. Let's go back and see if we don't have that plan here. And we do. We have TZ10. Let's select that. And then you have your other options, of course, that we're going to ignore for now. But you could have something like end of trial, meaning you select the current date, something like current date, and then you just add 7 days or however long you want the trial to be. We're going to leave that empty. We're going to go to our next step. So right now, if they pick a plan, they'll select the basic starter plan. And then what do we want to do after that? Well, we want them to go to the page of the index, meaning they successfully signed up. We don't just want to send anyone there that can subscribe to the plan and payment fails and they still get there. So let's put a conditional. Let's select if the result of step 1, if its status is active, then we'll go ahead and allow the user to proceed forward to our index page. So only when it's active are we going to move forward. Great. So now a user signs up and they go to the index page, but we're still missing something. We're not updating the database when they sign up. All the fields are still going to be empty, and we have nothing to match that user with any of their payment information. So let's add another action. Let's select create a new thing. And for the type of thing, we want to make a new payments. So we'll add all of the fields, and we need to update all of these when the user subscribes. So for last payment date, we'll come in and select result of step 1, and we'll do current period's ending date, and we'll select like that. For payment frequency, we'll do result of step 1, and then you select items, and you can scroll down and select each item's interval. That's Stripe's way of saying the payment frequency. Just keep that in mind. For the product ID, we'll select result of step 1, and we'll select the plan ID. For status, we'll come and select result of step 1 again, and we'll select the status. For Stripe customer ID, result of step 1, and then we just select the subscription ID. Select that. And then for subscription end date, we'll just do result of step 1, and we'll select the current period's ending date. And that means I actually want to change this last payment date, and I want to say it is the creation date, meaning when they paid. So now that we have all that, we should be updated. Let's move that step 3 to step 2. So we subscribe the user, update the info, and then we go to the page. Again, let's do a conditional here though. Let's check, see if result of step 1 status is active. And that way we can conditional the create a payments field as well. So nothing funny happens and the user can't get around that. So let's go to our sign up and we'll click preview. We want to sign up as a new user to see what happens. So we'll do a Stripe test at gmail.com. Test 1, 2, 3. Sign up, and we'll go through the steps together. So run next, see our information, run next, go to pricing page. You can see we're on the pricing page now. Let's try to sign up with a starter plan. So we'll run next. You can see it gets the Stripe plan name. Run next. And you see our Stripe page loads just as it should. And you can see our email is already input there. So that's great. Everything's working as expected. Now let's subscribe and see what happens. Well, we enter our card information. And when you're doing tests on Stripe, you can just enter 4242 repeating. That is going to be the test card. We'll enter my name. We'll enter a zip code, 12345. And then we'll hit subscribe. Let's do that. No thanks. Great. So we subscribed. And it looks your credit card information was successfully entered and you've been subscribed to the plan. Great. So now what's the next step? So you can see here it's labeled red. So let's look at that. Result of step 1, we have status is active. So is the status active? Yes, it should be. But look at this. It's lowercase. So in Bubble, we actually have to change our active to a lowercase active or it's not going to run. So I'm glad we ran into this error because I would not have known that if we didn't go through the debugging process. Let's go back and fix that. So let's go back to our pricing page. Come back and select where we added our conditionals. And this time, we want to change it to a active and another lowercase active here. Now let's go to our database and delete that record just so we can start from scratch. So we'll delete. Got it. Thank you, Bubble. And now we want to go back to our sign up page and preview. And we want to sign up again and see if that doesn't fix the issue. So let's sign in. We'll do test Stripe at gmail.com. Test 1, 2, 3. This is why I like to leave bugs in the videos because this is what you're really going to be running into. And you need to know how to debug this and solve them for yourself. I hate when tutorials just go through and everything's perfect and you run into problems and then you don't know how to fix it. So I'm glad this happens. So let's sign up, run next, subscribe user to a plan. Great. Go to our Stripe page. Awesome. Enter our information. Yada, yada, yada. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll subscribe. No thanks. Great. So we subscribed. Successful subscription. Okay, now you can see it's highlighted green, which is exactly what we want to happen. You can see now it is associated with active, so lowercase active. Just small things like that can cause major hiccups in your application. So that's why you always got to be paying attention. Run next, and we are in our index page, our welcome page. So it worked exactly as expected. Let's go to our database and see what got updated. We'll head over to data, and you can see in our payments, we now have our payment status as active, product ID, payment frequency, Stripe customer ID, etc., etc. But there's still something that's going to cause us problems in the future if you haven't already figured that out. If somebody cancels a subscription, we have nothing changing the status from active to not active, or however we want to dictate what the status is. A user could cancel, maintain their active status, still use our application, and that is a big no-no. We don't want that to happen. So let's fix that. But how are we going to know if they cancel their subscription? What if they go directly to Stripe and cancel their subscription? We need a way to directly interact with Stripe to know if they canceled on Stripe's end. So let's take a look at a new feature that we haven't really covered yet. And that's what's known as back-end workflows. So if you come up here to page, you can come see this back-end workflow. And this is what's going to happen in the back-end, meaning users don't really interact with this, and we don't take any users' data here. All we're doing is listening or interacting with other applications and getting their data and bringing it back to ours. So let's look at it. Let's go to backend workflow. You can see we have a workflow here. Of course, we're used to seeing this. We have a few new options. So what we want to do is create a new API workflow. And now you see we have the options pop up that we have available to us. Let's call this workflow Stripe. Great. So we have a Stripe workflow. We want to expose as a public API workflow. And we also want to allow this to run without authentication and ignore our privacy rules. We don't want anything stopping this from interacting with our application in any way. Just go ahead and click all of those as checks. And let's move on to exactly how we're going to interact with our Stripe. Well, we come to parameter definition. Right now it's a manual definition. We want to go and detect request data. Once you have that selected, you'll see a button pop up that says detect data. And we want to click this. And you'll notice that now Bubble is detecting a request data. What this really means is it's listening for something to happen. It's what's known as an event listener. So when something happens, it needs to do something or perform some action or receive data, something. When an event occurs, it needs to do something. So it's listening right now. And you can see the URL right here that we need to copy and paste into Stripe. So let's come back to Stripe. Come up here to your search bar and just type in webhook. Hit enter, go to our webhook. You can see here that it gives you a little diagram explaining what it is. We're just going to go ahead and add an endpoint. So we'll add the endpoint. The endpoint is going to be that URL that we just copied. I thought I copied. Let's go back and do that again. Copy. And we'll paste over here. Now we need to come and select our events. So what are we listening for? Well, two things. When something changes or is updated, or when a user is deleted. So let's do that. Let's come and select customer. We'll scroll down. We'll say when a customer subscription is deleted, we want to know about it. And when a customer subscription is updated, we want to know about that. Now, we don't really need to listen for a creation because we're doing that on Bubble's end anyways. So let's add those events. Add endpoint. Now we need to actually trigger this event. So let's go do that. Let's go back to our Bubble. We'll cancel this. And then we'll go into our sign up and we'll create another user and then cancel that user and see what happens. So we'll do Stripe cancel at gmail.com. Test 1, 2, 3. We'll sign up. We'll run through these really quick. And sign up again. Run next. Now we're in our Stripe. So you can see we have Stripe cancel. Enter that information. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can subscribe. Now we have this new user updated, and then we're going to go into Stripe's end and cancel it. So we made our user. Let's navigate to our index page. Let's go back to our Stripe and see that user. So we'll come to customers. We see Stripe canceled right here. Let's go to that. So this is all the information associated with our account. And you can see they're on the starter plan, how much they paid, their payment method, et cetera, et cetera. But what we want to do is actually trigger that event that is going to cancel this plan. So make sure in Bubble that you do have the detecting request data up and running so it listens for the event. Let's go and trigger that. So we'll cancel subscription. We'll do it immediately with no refund, and we'll cancel. Then let's come back to Bubble and see if anything happened. So you can see nothing happened. Let's go back to our webhook and see why that is. So in our webhook, you can see the events here. So we updated and then we deleted, and it looks like it's unauthorized. So let's refresh, make sure that was the last one we did. 1206, unauthorized. This application does not expose an API. Please upgrade your Bubble subscription for your API calls to run. So this is important to note. When running a backend workflow and anything like this that uses a paid feature, you need to have an updated Bubble subscription. So I'm going to update that and I'll get right back to you. Now, once you've updated your plan, make sure you come into API section in your settings and enable the backend workflows to be public. So enable data API, enable workflow API, and backend workflows, and then check your payments and users. Great. So everything's updated. Let's go back and try again. I'm going to cut this part out where I delete all the users info and start over. Now we're in our customer portal again where we have the active plan for our user. And remember, we need to trigger the cancellation event and listen for it in Bubble. So let's go back to Bubble. And now that we have our upgraded plan, we should be able to detect data and listen for the cancellation event, and the webhook should successfully send the information. Let's go back and cancel the plan. So we'll cancel subscription immediately and with no refund. So cancel. Now let's come back to Bubble. Finally, you can see that the information has been received and the webhook did in fact send the information. So you can see this massive object that has been added. Let's go ahead and save that. So we save all that information, and now when that happens, it's going to detect it every single time automatically. So let's go back into Stripe, and we need to do one more thing to our webhook. So let's come back, webhook, find it, and we'll click the one we made. You can see that it was successful. And now we want to edit it. So come and update details. And instead of initialize at the end, we want to get rid of that because we'll no longer be initializing. Just end with Stripe, and we can go ahead and update that endpoint. Now, there's one final piece to this, and that's updating that payments table and the user based on what event just happened. Let's go back to our backend workflow. So now let's update our thing. So we come here, we'll come to data things, and we want to change something. We want to change the payment. So let's do a search for and type payments, and let's add a constraint. And the constraint we're looking for, is that Stripe customer ID. So we'll do Stripe customer ID equals, and then we'll select request data's ID. And then we can close that. You can see it highlights blue, so that's good. And now we have to select first item. So we'll search for all those payments. We'll look for that Stripe customer ID, whoever it is, and then we'll select the first item. And then we're going to want to change a few fields. So let's add all the fields. I don't really care about updating the last payment date or the end date. All I really want to do is update the status. Let's go ahead and update everything. So payment frequency, we'll do request datas, and we'll look for something called interval. So let's type interval. Then you can see plan interval, so we'll select that. Then we'll select the request data's product ID or plan ID, I believe. So let's select plan ID. We'll select that. And then for status, super important, request data, and then we're looking for status. So type in status, request data's object status. That is going to be the most important one to update because that's going to allow us to cancel or gate our application from users that are no longer paying. So we'll update our Stripe customer ID as well, request data, and we'll update their ID. Of course, now that we've added this payment gateway, you want to be checking for active subscribers throughout your application. As many conditionals as you can perform, that is ideal. There can never be too many conditionals when it comes to security and gating your application correctly from users that aren't paying you anymore. And that is the final lesson of Module 2. We're now going to get into our capstone class, but real quick before that, I want you to go to the next video because I'm going to kind of conclude this course and give my thoughts to you because you might still be having some concerns. So I want to make a video just concluding Module 2. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you over there.